The Himalayas are currently facing a pressing issue of rapid climate change. In the densely populated Himalayan mid-hills, a network of rain-fed springs and streams is the principal source of drinking water, irrigation, and livelihoods. Recent studies highlight the alarming trend of these springs drying up, with women and children most affected. This underscores the urgent need for collective action. Climate forecast models predict higher rainfall with more intensity. This will result in higher surface runoff and reduced infiltration, further impacting the spring discharge. In 2008, the Rural Development Department, Government of Sikkim, launched the Dahara Vikash initiative to address the challenge of drying springs. This program aims to minimize surface runoff and increase groundwater recharge to sustain the rain-fed springs and streams across the state. The Dahara Vikash initiative focused on identifying the recharge area for each spring and undertaking recharge works in these spring sheds. Upscaling this intensive approach across the mid-hills of the Himalayan landscape in a time-bound manner is constrained by the availability of trained para-hydrogeologists, lack of expertise to delineate recharge areas, sheer number of springs, and fund availability. So, while this spring-centric approach demonstrated proof of concept that springs could be revived, it was too intensive for scaling up over larger units such as a watershed. Aquifer-based Springshed management uses the mountain aquifer instead of the spring as the planning unit. In this approach, instead of recharging springs, which are the discharge points of the aquifer, we recharge mountain aquifers, feeding the spring. The approach involves identifying the common recharge area of the aquifer based on a hydrogeological study. Hilltop forests are targeted for recharge interventions, as they serve as the recharge zone of the aquifer. How to plan and execute aquifer-based springshed management? There are 6 steps to follow. Step 1. Identification and assessment of site. Step 2. Social survey and water budgeting. Step 3. Hydrogeological mapping. Step 4. Synthesis and DPR preparation. Step 5. Implementation. And Step 6. Monitoring and evaluation. Step 1. Identification and assessment of site. Prioritize drought-prone areas in the region for taking up springshed management. Use Survey of India topo sheets to identify the hilltop forests within this area. Exclude areas prone to landslides or those with slopes exceeding 70%. Avoid lands of small and marginal farmers for recharge works, as it will impact their livelihoods. After this, take up desk work to assess the site characteristics of the project area. Using a GIS platform, create thematic maps of land use and land cover, drainage and contour. Additionally, geological maps from the Geological Survey of India provide crucial details of geology at the regional level, such as fracture, fault, dip direction, and rock types. Analyze this secondary information before the field visit. Importing GIS layers of geology, slope, drainage, and forest cover into Google Earth enhances visualization. Geotagging of spring locations on Google Earth, if available, further enriches the understanding of the area. Engaging a GIS professional is advisable for these tasks. Based on this desk work, detailed site visits can be conducted effectively. Step 2. Social survey and water budgeting. The field survey is planned during the lean season when spring discharge is the lowest. In the initial phase of the field survey, local communities identify the village water resources through participatory rural appraisal and focused group discussions. A water budget is prepared to understand demand and supply. Demand is the total water requirement for domestic use in the village, whereas supply is the water available in the springs during the lean season. Together with the help of the community, a village water security plan is prepared. Developing a village water security plan involves developing an informal operational mechanism for water management in the village, forming water user groups, determining household dependency per spring, determining the seasonality of springs, and creating a village water resource map. This map helps to better understand the village's water-related vulnerability. Step 3. Hydrogeological mapping. After the social survey, conducting a hydrogeological survey of the chosen site is crucial to understand the region's hydrogeology. The geological map of the Geological Survey of India is a guiding tool during fieldwork. The best locations to assess the regional geology are where the rocks are exposed, such as road cuttings, natural cliffs, and rock exposures on the riverbeds. Traversing from one valley to another within the selected hill is the preferred approach for a hydrogeological survey, as it provides insights into the overall hill hydrogeology. Surveying springs alongside a geological survey of the site provides an overview of its hydrogeology. Recording details of rock exposures and springs at each location is essential, as this aids in identifying the recharge areas. Dip direction, dip amount, fracture and fault direction, water source location, and soil type are important parameters to be observed at each exposure site. The GPS location of each exposure site is vital for post-processing. A Brunton compass measures the alignment of rocks and fractures at particular locations. In recent days, mobile applications have also become available to validate these measurements. A simple technique for determining dip direction in geological formations involves pouring water onto the rock surface. The direction in which the water flows indicates the dip direction. One should position the compass on its side to measure the dip, ensuring alignment along the downward slope. Subsequently, the inclinometer must be adjusted until the bubble is leveled. The calibrated scale within the compass indicates the dip amount, with the inner portions of the scale utilized for determining the dip direction. To ascertain this, a compass is positioned along the observed dip direction, with the north pointer of the compass indicating the dip direction. In this specific case, the dip direction is noted as 280 degrees. A simple compass diagram can be used to illustrate the concept. 0 degrees or 360 degrees corresponds to the north direction, 90 degrees to the east, 180 degrees to the south, and 270 degrees to the west. Therefore, 280 degrees falls between 270 degrees and 360 degrees, indicating a dip direction towards the northwest. Fractures and foliation in hard rocks serve as pathways for groundwater movement. For instance, quartzite emits a hard sound when hit with a hammer, while phyllite, a softer rock, produces a softer sound. Soft rocks, such as phyllite, are more capable of retaining water and tend to be cooler than hard rocks. The direction of fractures is significant in hydrogeological surveys. Like dip direction, the direction of fractures can be determined by placing a compass along the fracture line. Like strike, fractures also exhibit two directions. In the present scenario, the fracture is oriented vertically, aligning with 0 degrees north and 180 degrees south. This indicates that the fracture extends in a north-south direction. Every observation must record the GPS location, dip direction, dip amount, fracture direction, and rock type. During hydrogeological surveys, it is essential to visit springs and analyze the geological features surrounding their catchment areas, as this yields crucial insights into the spring's typology. Long-term measurement of spring discharge provides valuable information about the characteristics of the aquifers it originates from. Spring discharge exhibits a rhythmic pattern with rainfall, and the techniques used to measure it are specific to each site, some of which are as follows. Fixed dimension pipe method. When springs flow through fixed dimension pipes, their discharge can be measured using bucket and time techniques. This technique involves collecting all the water flowing through the pipe until a known bucket volume is filled. The time required to fill the bucket is noted, and the discharge is then calculated in liters per minute when water is coming from inside the pond. If the spring is a small pond, discharge measurement involves scooping out a fixed volume of water from the pond. Before scooping, the water level is measured using a scale. A specific volume of water is then scooped out, and the time taken for the water to return to its initial level is observed. This method resembles the time and bucket technique, with discharge expressed in liters per minute. Velocity area method. When the spring flows through a fixed dimension channel, it is convenient to use the velocity area technique to measure the discharge. A small, lightweight floating object, such as a small plastic ball, is allowed to flow in the channel's water for a known distance, and the time taken to travel this distance is noted using a stopwatch. The length of the distance traveled by the ball divided by the time taken yields the velocity. Next, the area of the channel's cross-section is determined using its dimensions and the depth of water in the channel. This cross-sectional area of the channel multiplied by the velocity gives the spring's discharge. All measurements should be in the same unit, such as foot or meter. If the time is measured in seconds, the discharge will be in cubic feet per second or cubic meters per second. Automatic flume. This method involves installing discharge measuring flumes in the springs. These flumes are connected to a GPS system, enabling automatic discharge measurement. Data can be obtained via the internet through this system. Each of these techniques offers distinct advantages and may be selected based on the specific characteristics of the spring and the resources available. Step 4. Synthesis and DPR preparation. After the hydrogeological survey, the collected data is entered in MS Excel. This sheet is then saved as a .csv extension file, as this file format is compatible with Google Earth and GIS, facilitating easy import. Using this method, multiple rows of data can be uploaded simultaneously. Once the data is imported into Google Earth, the next step involves determining the strike and dip direction for interpretation. The azimuth tools are accessed to draw the dip direction, and the end north is double-clicked to reset the direction to north, located at the top right corner of the window. Secondly, the terrain feature in Google Earth should be disabled. This option is found on the Window's left sidebar, where the box tick mark should be unchecked. This action converts the three-dimensional map into a two-dimensional plane, simplifying the drawing of the strike direction, dip direction, and fracture direction on the map. The exposure place mark contains rows of data associated with specific locations. The ruler tool in the menu bar at the top of the window is used to establish the strike, dip, and fracture direction. Since the strike direction, dip direction, and dip amount are in degree format, the map length unit in the ruler tools is set to a degree unit. Check the strike degree in the place mark. Use the ruler tool to draw the strike line matching the strike degree as given in the place mark. Now check the dip direction in the place mark, zoom in on the strike line, and use the ruler tool again to draw the dip direction from the middle of the strike line. Now, you can show dip and strike directions in the particular position. Similarly, draw the strike and dip direction lines for each exposure on the plane. Additionally, draw the fracture line using the same ruler tool. If over 80% of the rocks exhibit the same or nearly the same dip direction, then it can be concluded that the overall rocks in that location are dipping in the same direction. Here, most exposed rocks are dipping towards the northwest direction. The northwest slope of the hill is the dip slope. The escarpment slope is situated diagonally opposite the dip slope, facing towards the southeast. In most instances, the dip slope is gentler and covered with more built-up areas, agricultural fields, and vegetation, whereas escarpments generally have a high slope and fewer built-up areas. The escarpment slopes always serve as recharge zones. Springs located on escarpment slopes are predominantly fracture-controlled springs. In this case, we aim to rejuvenate the springs on the escarpment slope. The identified recharge area for the aquifer is along the fractures and at the top of the ridge. Recharge measures implemented on hilltops benefit both dip slopes and escarpment slopes. In aquifer-based springshed management, recharge measures primarily focus on the hill's ridgeline. Forested areas on hilltops are ideal locations for recharge measures. Since most forest areas in Sikkim are under the jurisdiction of the Forest Department, this gives an added advantage for the implementation of recharge measures in these areas. The Google Earth file is saved in KML extension and transferred to a GIS application. This KML file serves as a basis for creating various useful maps. Overlaying the geology map, drainage map, spring locations, and slope map aids in confirming the recharge area, which is crucial for detailed project report preparation. Areas with a slope less than 30% are deemed suitable for implementing recharge measures. After identifying the recharge area, slopes are classified using GIS application. The areas with slope less than 30% are pinpointed as the recharge zone. A slope map is then prepared in GIS and uploaded to Google Earth. Using this slope map, the exact recharge area can be calculated, facilitating the preparation of estimates for aquifer-based springshed management. Standard estimations are prepared in an Excel sheet, incorporating all technical details gathered from the field, which are then used to prepare the detailed project report. The DPR contains the detailed background of the project area, such as the need for the project, demographic details, technical and financial details. Analysis of hydrogeological data collected from the field with the help of slope map, aspect map, digital elevation model map, land use and land cover map, and geological map is useful for confirming recharge zone. The preparation of financial estimation is the crucial step of the detailed project report. One worker is estimated to make 2 trenches of 2 meters length by 1 meter width and 0.6 meter depth in a day. A total of 150 trenches are constructed per hectare. Similarly, it is estimated that 3 workers can construct 1 pond of 3 meter length by 3 meter width and 0.6 meter depth in a day. A total of 10 ponds are constructed per hectare. The wage rate varies with the program and the locality. Comparing the lean season discharge of the springs before and after the implementation of works is an indicator of the success of these works. Therefore, always collect baseline information of springs discharge before the implementation of the works. Step 5. Implementation. Implementing recharge measures focuses on identifying and targeting the recharge zone, which is determined by the slope of the land. These measures aim to manage and capture surface runoff effectively. In areas with natural depressions, ponds are constructed to capture maximum runoff. Standard pond dimensions measure 3 meter in length, 3 meter in breadth, and 0.6 meter depth, with adjustments made based on site-specific requirements. Feeder channels connected to the pond from both sides aid in harvesting additional surface flow. The pond walls should be sloped at a 45-degree angle rather than vertical to prevent cave-ins. Trenches are small rectangular structures, typically measuring 2 meter in length, 1 meter in breadth, and 0.6 meter in depth, constructed on sloping land in a staggered manner. Like ponds, trenches are connected by feeder channels to capture additional surface runoff. The walls of the trenches should not exceed a slope of 45 degrees. The size of the trenches and their spacing are dependent on the slope of the land. In areas with steeper slopes, smaller trenches with closer spacing are required to manage runoff effectively. Trekking trails in forested areas serve as natural channels for surface runoff. By diverting surface runoff from these trails, using feeder channels, and connecting them to trenches or ponds, maximum runoff can be harvested during rainfall events. Step 6. Monitoring and evaluation. One of the most effective approaches to aquifer-based springshed management is to involve the community in the planning, implementation, and monitoring processes. Communities serve as the most insightful evaluators of the project's outcomes. Documenting people's perceptions regarding spring discharge in their village before and after the project is crucial. Monitoring spring discharge through manual measurements and rainfall assessments is a cost-effective yet scientifically sound method. Engaging trained local community resource persons is more sustainable than relying on external sources for monitoring purposes. Installing automatic discharge measurement flumes in springs is beneficial for frequent measurement of spring discharge, and the data can be obtained remotely through the internet. While the initial installation cost is high, they have low maintenance and operational expenses. Manual rain gauges are a cost-effective option for measuring rainfall. It is essential to install these gauges in the recharge zone and involve the local community in rainfall monitoring. According to the Indian Meteorology Department, the standard times for monitoring rainfall are 8:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. daily. Although automatic weather stations require significant initial investment, they offer long-term reliability. Data from these stations can be obtained remotely using GPRS systems. Hydrographs are used to study the relationship between rainfall and discharge. They provide insights into aquifer characteristics, such as water travel time from recharge to discharge and aquifer storage capacity. Here it is observed that the lean period discharge of the spring has increased from 12 liters per minute in May 2022 to 19 liters per minute in May 2023, the amount of rainfall received being the same. Learnings from experience. 1. Implementing springshed works in privately owned agricultural land presents challenges, as small and marginal farmers have limited land holdings and are adversely impacted by the work. 2. Making trenches on the top of a convex land profile may result in minimal runoff harvesting due to the available micro-catchment area. 3. The pine forests in the recharge zone hinder water infiltration, as the topsoil tends to be hard and compact. 4. Concretizing lakes or ponds, particularly those on the hilltop, can disrupt the natural recharge process for downstream springs. This action blocks infiltration channels, drying up springs downstream of the lake or pond. 5. The community's involvement in various activities under springshed management is crucial for its success. Contribution from the community in the form of manual labor can build a sense of ownership. 6. For the sustainability of springshed management activities, it is important to mainstream springshed management in the government programs on watershed development, public work programs, wage employment programs, water supply, and climate change adaptation. 7. Baseline assessment of the lean period discharge of the network of springs fed from the aquifer needs to be carried out during the planning phase. After implementation of the recharge works, the discharge needs to be monitored again to assess the impact of the project. This will also help to ascertain the localities that have benefited most from the intervention and also those that have benefited the least. 8. Most of the artificial recharge works are feasible in the upper part of the mountain aquifer, while the benefits of this are mostly reaped by the households in the lower and middle part. One way to compensate for this inequity is to strengthen the above-ground water storage infrastructure by public funding household and community water storage tanks. 9. Capacity development of the stakeholders, from the community to the relevant government departments, is important for the success of the springshed management programs. 10. The aquifer-based springshed management approach has the additional benefit of automatically recharging the nearby streams, which are a source of water for the community. These streams can enhance the base flow and feed the downstream rivers. The aquifer-based springshed management offers a unique opportunity to sustain mountain springs thereby aiding in climate change adaptation and ultimately ensuring long-term water security in the mountains.